let's bring Michael and Ray. Now, Michael Lichens with us. He's via Skype in Denver, Colorado. He's going to talk about that classic Bible comics. Thanks so much for being with us, Michael.
Thank you. It's great to join you all this morning.
Now, it's amazing to learn that these vintage comics from 1974 are making a comeback. Could you tell us about why that is so and why comics are sort of still with us and actually growing in some areas?
I think a big part of it is, like you and I both, we have happy memories of our childhood of reading them, whether it was our grandma bringing back newspaper clippings, or in my case, it was my older brother who just had a box full of vintage comics that I could go through, and they kind of stick with you, the imagery, the storylines. And I think, especially as we get older, we realize they're not just for telling the stories of Ziggy or Captain America. They can be used to tell more serious stories. Yeah. And these comics are meant for kids, but at the same time, we see them adapted to familiar stories to reintroduce them to us. And I think they've stuck around for way longer than I've been alive for that reason.
Now, in comics cover 23 stories from both the Old and New Testament. Do you have any favorites that you are drawn to?
Oh, yeah. In terms of visual representation, I think the story of Jonah, the artist Alvin Silverstein did a great job depicting that in all its colorful weirdness. And the Noah's Ark might just be the most 70s, in the best way possible, the most 70s comic you could possibly pick up. It's very colorful, it's a little chaotic, and it's also very hopeful. And yeah, I actually would love to have some of those panels from Noah framed up on my wall.
And the graphic novel comics and the like are seeing a resurgence. How does this translate for faith-based work and for scriptural work, Michael?
For us, in a lot of very encouraging means. We've been publishing comics at Sophia Institute Press for a couple of years now. Some I would not recommend for kids. We have one about Maximilian Kolbe that's more older teens. In this case, I think what they do more than anything, these stories are familiar to us, but when you see them in a graphic form, in a comic book form, format that might be familiar to a lot of us, but in a story we've never seen in a graphic form, I think it helps us to reapproach these stories, especially if we've heard them 1,000 times. We've all heard Joseph and his amazing coat of many colors numerous times, but to see it done in a graphic detail in a format we haven't seen in a while, I think it helps us to approach it in a different way, to kind of see some parts of the stories that we might have missed the first few times we read through it. And I know visually, like some of the visuals from especially these great vintage comics really stick in your head, whether you were meaning them to or not. And in my case, they tend to come back to you at the weirdest times. I must think of Jonah and the way being spit out from the whale at least 3 times a day since I've seen that graphic.
No, that's great. And, Michael, for myself, I love a light summer read with very good and beautiful content. So for summer reading, where can people find their copy of your book?
You can find it at all the great major booksellers online. You can also go to sophiainstitute.com and pick up your copy and order it directly from us. That will be there front and center. And if you happen to have a local Catholic bookstore, stop by and see if they have it. They're always worth supporting.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Michael. It was great learning a little bit more about this great Catholic comic book.